Legacy Week 9 has come and gone. Definitely a lot more interesting matchups on the football end, not so much on the fantasy end, but pretty pivotal because as we know, we only have a few weeks left here. So teams that are going to go on a run will not have too many more chances to do so. So Week 9 is when you want to kick it up into next gear. We'll look at football and then we'll see which teams I'm talking about that really pushed it this week. After the last little while of just the better teams almost always winning and only a few kind of upsets or runs, I guess we had a bunch more in Week 9, didn't we? The Panthers, are they actually okay when they have an okay quarterback? Pittsburgh, who went from looking not great defensively, was definitely good enough defensively. Minnesota occasionally plays okay, I guess. At least the Lions think so. I don't really know if there's like a return to form or exactly what went on in terms of point spread, but at least there was a lot more games to talk about, and yet we almost always end up talking about the same game every single year. I probably could have gone back to last year's video talking Bills and Chiefs, and the same thing just seems to keep happening, and no one really kind of makes a reaction to it. The Bills won in the regular season game. That was fine. It was a good game. I mean, the Chiefs aren't looking amazing, but they've been playing well enough. But we just kind of assume that the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs and that the Bills are going to lose to them in the playoffs because that just seems to be what happens. So there wasn't really any kind of shuffling of the order. The only thing I'll say, though, is the Chiefs technically, I believe, are 8th right now and only 7 make it. So they might want to start playing like the Redwoods are supposed to be as opposed to the Ficuses that have been coming out recently. Other than that, we had a pretty electric game in Chicago and Cincinnati going at it, and you got to feel for Cincinnati. I'm actually starting to wonder if Joe Burrow maybe isn't a great quarterback, but just anyone in Cincinnati could be a great quarterback. Flacco, it's not like, I mean, he did win Comeback Player of the Year not too long ago, but he was brutal for the Browns. But then again, it is the Browns, and I do have to make a weekly reference of them being crap. But at the same time, he can't be happy. He's putting up amazing statistics, and yet they're just finding ways to win. It's almost like instead of just re-signing everybody on the same key offensive positions, they maybe should have thought about defense, but whatever. Just hit some dingers. On the other side, too, we started to get some stuff creeping into our fantasy realm there. We had Washington's big injury. Daniels, that was kind of gross. Kraft, I was too nice to him last week, and then he hurts himself pretty badly after pretty much winning a couple weeks in the last few. He definitely lost it for some people. We had some trade deadline stuff, which normally doesn't happen. The Jets are pretty convinced that they're rebuilding, and actually now they're going to have 5 number 1 picks in the next 2 years. And that's the second time they can say that in the last 5 years. 21 and 22, they had 5 first-round picks. And actually, had they picked a better quarterback, we might not be talking about them of doing it again. So lots to think about and lots to talk about. Coming into Week 10, fantasy-wise, we are really getting to the crux of our season here, and not a great week for probably the second most impactful bye week of the year. We had Buyapalooza with the 6 teams. We only have 4, but 3 of the 4, Tennessee, if you've been banking on them, that's kind of shame on you. But Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Dallas, these have been a lot of our offensive production over the last few weeks. I mean, we can talk a lot about Dallas and Cincinnati not stopping anyone, but they sure were scoring a lot. So this week's scores in a super, super important week might be all over the map. Might be having to go to the bench, maybe even the waiver wire. Either way, let's actually stop talking about football because now we're getting to the point where fantasy is where it's at. Let's go to our leagues. Double J or Double B, I'm not sure what they want to go by, went off for 220 pretty much this week. And the crazy thing was, defense not so great, Daniel Jones not so great, but when they were great, they definitely were great. Tight end 1 and wide receiver 1, and actually the top 2 scorers of the week just pretty much on their own. He also had the tight end 3 putting into his flex with a double tight end set, and obviously Jackson Dart got him some points but didn't quite crack. Flacco actually would have gotten them more points. He was the QB2 on the week, so this could have been even grosser. Tim, not much you're really going to do against this one. 122 wasn't going to beat a whole lot of people anyway, but you definitely weren't going to touch it, and you realize I'm not talking about any of your players. None of them hit the top 5. So if it's going to happen all in one week, I suppose it's not the worst, but you are probably, when we get to the standings, going to have to go on a run here if you want to try and make the postseason. For the other guys, top 4, and if you keep winning like this, you won't be stopping at 4. After some bumps in the road, Jeff, you're back on the winning streak and still maintained your number one. 189 is going to be the top scorer in most weeks, but just not this one. You did have a few people kind of ring the bell, or people like your wide receivers who didn't technically, get top five, but did just fine, although just under predicteds. Their predicteds are insane. Sam Darnold was the QB4. You also had the RB2 in Dowdle. I know it's really tough to figure out Carolina, so I guess start them both and figure it out. So if you look at an average, 31 between both running backs is pretty good. You even got 26 points out of Geno Smith. I don't know how many more times you're going to be able to say that. Not a whole lot on your bench, so this was a really important week to make sure your guys scored. On the flip side, Connor, can't buy a whole lot of luck. Allen was the QB3, not surprisingly. DJ Moore was just outside of the top five, but a great performance, and Pittman obviously as well. Just couldn't put it together, had two extremely key injuries, so I don't know how many more quarterbacks you're going to be taking or how many quarterbacks you're going to keep getting hurt, but with 2 and 7, like I just said, you're going to need a win streak real soon. Speaking of which, Marco's also on the outside looking in, but with a little bit more promise. And if he keeps going off with 167, he just might squeak into that top 6. After all, T. Higgins was the wide receiver 2, and he also had the running back 5, and then just some players that were above or at where they needed to be. So no harm, no foul there. No one really on either one of our benches that did a whole lot, and definitely that was a big week for you because that was a huge bye week yet to cover. Me to an extent too, but I just made some wrong plays. I had the running back 1. That's about it. I did also have some people do okay, but just you need a little bit better than okay. And being that far under predicted is not going to do a whole lot for me. Pretty lucky I'm holding on to second place right now. Sometimes football doesn't make a whole lot of sense. How does Chicago score that many points? Caleb Williams was the QB1, and his buddy Odunze just got locked out. Not a whole lot. Of course, the running back helped you out there. That was the running back 3 on the week, so you're probably not too bummed if Swift stays out. Other than that, you made pretty much all the right calls. You did have some points here on the bench, but nothing to sneeze at, and you did also have some bye weeks here. On the flip side, Timmy, this was you pretty much almost hit predicted, but that's what happens when you don't put someone in your flex. Obviously, someone fell asleep at the wheel on that one. Devontae, though, was the wide receiver 5, so you weren't without some fireworks. You're just going to need to put it together, though, if you want to crack this top 6. 130 is not going to win it every week, but it certainly is going to win it this week for you, Rennie. And Gene, both teams underpredicted for 2 playoff teams. That's not necessarily normal. Gene, you had nobody on your team crack the top 5, although Kyren Williams was quite close. He was just outside of the top 5 in running back performances. On the bench here, Rennie, just since I'm looking at it, you had the tight end 4, so that would have been a good start, especially consider your tight end that you started didn't finish, so at least you know you got some help on the bench, and that injury might not kill you as much as it might have hurt others. RB4 as well, and you did have the QB5 downstairs here with Herbert. And similar to what we just said before, sometimes you just got to get your points when you get them, and you didn't have too many people fall off the table. So take the win, stay in third, technically tied for second. Gene, hanging on to 6th place, so let's see how you bounce back next week. Seems pretty easy and straightforward. If you're over 500, you're in the playoffs. If you're not, you're not. But we do have some teams just close to it here, so it's going to come down to a lot of matchup keys. With 5 weeks left especially, it's going to really matter who you play here because we're going to need to go on a run if you want to hang on to your spot. A lot of people here, and hopefully we didn't have a whole lot come down to the wire. Most of the fantasy matchups were over pretty early. We'll see if we have a few come down to it, especially when we look at some people who are fighting for playoff spots here. 5 weeks left, so not a lot more chances, but as we can already see with matchups, it's going to come down to who was able to have a deeper bench and pick people up. A lot of teams this week, especially 3 out of the 4 on the bye, that are really, really putting people in a tough spot. So you're going to hope for some fluke touchdowns, and that's just kind of what it comes down to. So if that's you, congratulations. If it's not, don't worry. There's always next week. Best luck, everybody.